Welcome back, everybody, to the finale of the final Coil of Bahamut in this storyline, where the shit has just hit the fan. Yes. Now, I had originally intended to do this at the very end, at the closing of the last episode, but I didn't want to go into too much blank time where there's no actual game time playing. So, as the first thing I'm going to go into today is the reflection, as I promised, of the line that Louisoix states about the dragons being accursed and him being exalted. For a long time, I never really understood what he meant by that line, because at no point during this has anyone actually blamed the dragons of Mericidia for what happened. As soon as we discovered them, we're like, oh shit, they're the victims here. And prior to Dalamud's fall, nobody actually knew Bahamut was inside there. He's been forgotten about for 5 millennia. We didn't even know these dragons existed until 20 minutes ago in universe time. So the fact that he's saying that, they're accursed, under normal circumstances, is completely inaccurate until I realized what he possibly meant by that. That is actually foreshadowing, because what they were accursed and he's exalted for, summoning a primal. It's actually right there in the dialogue before you know it, because obviously what they did is they summoned Bahamut, which turned out to be, obviously a revenge-driven monster, and what he has become and what he prayed for is to become a primal himself. And yeah, he's got a good point that, the creation of Bahamut is pretty much looked down upon, but not that of the Phoenix. Of course, we didn't know the Phoenix existed until right now, but we'll get more into that when we get to the actual closer here. So yeah, Phoenix out here is actually blue instead of its normal red. This is a whole red oni, blue oni kind of thing, according to the devs, because he and Bahamut obviously both represent the element of fire, but here it's, blue fire versus, in comparison to Bahamut's red. So yeah, I don't really like the chest so much, but I mean the tails and the glowy blue are just awesome. And an interesting little side effect of having him blue like this is it actually sort of fits in with the whole neon blue Alagon motif you see a lot. I mean, it's even on the floor here, for crying out loud here. But another thing I find really interesting about this whole what Louisoix has said, and is when he talks about, rend this defined form of thunder and claim your answers. That's another little clever bit of foreshadowing for what's going on here, because it's not so much of as a taunt, but it's actually can be seen as a cry for help and for release. If you remember, the entity Nail Deus Darnus was a female created from the original Nail Van Darnus, who actually has a few moments of consciousness before he officially, dies, because he's what we presume to be released from Bahamut's control by Bahamut's choice. If that actually is what happened is not explored, it doesn't matter, but the hint is there that perhaps there is another way besides the release of death to regain control from that of being a slave to a primal here. It's not coincidence that it happened down here. There is a chance that Louisoix is still in there. And in fact, remember, he does recognize his grandchildren. So, granted, he's not like a separate sort of entity like Nail Deus Darnus, the chick was, but whatever. There's just a lot of metaphysics and stuff behind there. But yeah, the only move that I'm going to relate to here is the move Revelation. Which is why I said no pun intended at the last part. But yeah, here Alize, I have to give this girl a lot of credit, because she has gone through so much freaking shit down here. Alright, and she is 16 years old, okay? She's already screwed up from, losing her grandfather, who she loved dearly, and then after the fact, and the circumstances and whatnot, and yes, I did get hit by something I wasn't supposed to, sue me. But she just keeps on trucking down here, completely. First it was oh, I don't know what's down here. Oh, it's Bahamut's severed head, and oh, look, Grandpa's down here keeping vigil over him. That's pretty awesome. But even though she's upset that she doesn't get a chance to talk to him. But then there's, come second coil when it's revealed that not only is Bahamut continuing to regenerate it, but oh no, her grandfather just tried to freaking kill her and is revealed to be actually working for the Primal instead of against him. And then there's the fact now that he just openly insulted her and her brother, and it's turned out he's a Primal. I'm sorry, I would still be shitting my pants over everything that's happened entirely since the beginning, and she just keeps on going. She is whether or not she realizes it, she is absolutely unstoppable. She has a will that cannot be denied here. I mean, look at it this way. I mean, even though she's a child prodigy and all that, she's a freaking teenager! A freaking teenager! They already have enough shit to deal with. I mean, those of you who are actually older and remember being a teenager, you know what annoying little shits they are. And how much it sucks to be one. Even as a teenager, when you think you know everything, life is still complicated and messy and whatnot. Imagine having to deal with that and this shit on top of it. Okay, I would absolutely fall apart. Completely fall apart. And of course, Alphino over here is taking all this with a grain of salt and whatever. I mean, it's never really said when he figures this out. And because we don't know, in fact, of when exactly the timeline is, I'm not sure if this takes place before or after the whole Shiva incident. But if it takes place after, it gives a little bit more credence to his idea, because having seen Izel turn into Shiva, well, he wasn't there for it, but knowing Izel turned into Shiva, would certainly make him realize it is possible for a, one who is born, as mortal flesh to become a primal, and that they're not just entities just torn out of the ethereal sea, you know what I mean? But that's never actually really said, nor is it really relevant to this, but because of that, I'd like to think it comes, even though, like I said, we don't know exactly when the timeline is for this. I'd like to think this part does happen after the whole Shiva stuff, because it does make sense that why he would guess that, and not her, who's just as smart, by the way. But yay, Phoenix is red now. Awesome. But yeah, and we actually have Phoenix edges here. And one thing I actually didn't notice until after I started watching this as I was trying to record this, is these little Phoenix edges that are actually traveling and dive bombing across the screen are actually the same ones who make a little tether to you. They pretty much just stop at the end of the arena and then turn around and attack. I always thought they were two separate entities because they appear on the aggro list as separate. It's just a nice little tidbit there, which I found interesting. Once again, I didn't even notice until months and months after I recorded this that, oh hey, I thought they were two entirely different things. So that was kind of neat. Because obviously I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing and following mechanics. I don't have a third-person view until after the fact when I was editing this all together in my butchered format. So yeah, it's interesting. It takes place on the field right before, and that Bahamut and his regeneration is looming in the background the entire time over this. Just gives it a more sense of grandeur rather than just being like a generic arena. Now, where this is in this giant room, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, I guess. Just the fact that it's taking place, in the same place where we very first discovered, well, Alize actually very first saw Louisoix down here, and when we first got our first glimpse of the actual Bahamut rather than just broken, corrupted crystal pieces of him and whatnot. So I like what they did there, that he is literally the final guard. I mean, granted, we saw at the beginning cutscene here, they were in front of one of the panels, but I like it all the more that this fight takes place here instead of elsewhere, because he did threaten to kill us if we should step foot in here, and yet we defeated two of the Coil's Guardians without him actually stopping us. So did he plan for us to get this far? Was he waiting for us to get this far? Was he guarding the panel to make sure we didn't sneak in behind him? There is no answer to that. I'd like to think he's serving as the final guarding and make sure we don't sneak in here and split up and whatnot and together. At least that's what I'd like to think, rather than waiting at the entrance, because he had no way of knowing which entrance we went in, I suppose. So what better way than just to guard one of the panels. But considering there's another panel in here somewhere, how did he know which one we appear? I don't know. He may have just sensed when we came in and then just started watching us and then, you know, picked the panel that, you know, was closest to us to be guardian of or something or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, I suppose, but it's just a little nitpick that, you know, you threaten to kill us and then you actually wait this long to actually do it. It makes, you know, your threat seem a little less serious. So obviously, yeah, the stick for the end of this fight is just stacking Flames of Rebirth, which will do increasingly more damage each time. And every time you actually, what's interesting about this fight too is every time somebody dies, that stack increases. Which is kind of fitting for the Primal of Rebirth here, that your death makes him stronger. Oh, ho, Lakewood, look, fanfare again! Hooray! Of course, us rolling on the loot and stuff like that. I just like the fanfare playing and whatnot, and giving you guys a chance to at least see very briefly what some of the gear is like in here. Just for the sake of, you know, let's play purposes. And I don't like cutting out where I don't have a fade anyway, so... So, what do you mean proceed to the next area? We haven't turned off the panel yet! So, we just gonna go back and do that? Like, what? Or hell, why didn't the twins turn off the panel while we were in the middle of doing this? We're like, quick, while he's distracted, let's go find the other one! I mean, I know they want to see the outcome of this, but still, come on. That's what I would have done. I'd be like, get me the fuck out of here, I can't handle this.
Grandfather is truly gone this time. But better it end this way than the alternative.
Oh, she has a sad.
I am yet here, Alice, my dear, sweet granddaughter.
Is he okay?
Grandfather?
I must thank you, warrior of light. Without your valor, I might never have broken free of Bahamut's control. These last few moments are mine, to live as the man I once was.
Is this some sort of rule that you become this entity and then like 5 minutes later you just die after coming back to yourself?
Now that it is happening, I find myself struggling to believe it. Is it really you?
Group hug? Something? Anything? Come on!
Grandfather, pray forgive me my insolence. It was not my intent to demean you.
You didn't do anything wrong!
Forgive you? I am proud of you, child. You were wise enough to deduce the manner of creature I had become. Alfino, Alize, if any here should beg forgiveness, it is I.
Grandfather, I must ask, will you not tell us what befell during the calamity?
Yeah, that's the reason we came down here in the first place, remember? That's what started this whole shebang.
Yes, yes, of course. You have come far to hear the truth.
The answers we sought, perhaps? Eh? Eh?
Let us then begin the tale at the Battle of Cartano, where clashed the forces of the Garlean Empire and the Eorzean Alliance.
Someone turn off this panel already!
'Twas there in the sky above the surging armies that the elder Primal Bahamut broke free of the Red Moon Dalamut. In an effort to contain this avatar of destruction, I called upon the 12 to aid me in the creation of a prison of ether.
Yeah, we saw how that went.
But Bahamut would not be caged by such feeble bars. Too vast was his might, too fierce his rage. Little choice remained to me. I used the last of my strength to entrust our hope unto the future, and prepared to meet my end.
Now here you are going to see some extremely bad butchered editing, and there's a reason for this. This is going to be the second half of the Flames of Truth video that I've linked in the first part, and obviously will link again here. This was an FMV that was officially released by Square Enix, and it's in the corner and heavily sped up because showing it unaided was probably going to get me a huge copyright strike and possibly having the video taken down. So this is my way around it by having it showed to you, obviously heavily butchered, without obviously trying to put my account at risk here. So yeah, it is like sped up like 3 times to what it was. This cutscene is very epic, and I watched it a zillion times when someone actually posted a video of the world's first clear of this. But the interesting thing here is even though he obviously becomes a primal here, he actually is not shown in the Phoenix form. And I believe it's because they meant to show this FMV to the public and have it released from the very beginning. The fact that Louisoix and Bahamut duked it out at Cartano isn't really a mystery at all. We know we both were there, but the revelation that he's a primal is a major spoiler.
As you have no doubt surmised, I did not perish. When the cage built from the essences of the 12 was destroyed, the sky was filled with a colossal cloud of ether. This drifting energy responded to the prayers of those fighting below, and to my own desperate wish that the dying realm be saved by infusing me with the power of a primal. I became the immortal Phoenix, ancient symbol of rebirth. Rising into the sky, I struck Bahamut with all my newfound strength. The blow shattered his earthly form, and a shower of ether rained down upon the land.
Giving Bond a nuclear winter in Kurthis. Nice.
Thus began the rejuvenation of Eorzea.
Well, actually it's a pretty crapsack world right now, but
Believing the deed done, I relinquished my hold on that staggering energy, desirous that it should be returned to the realm without delay. But I had not reckoned on Bahamut's tenacious will. Even as he teetered upon the cusp of oblivion, the dragon reached out to claim me.
well, you should have known after he broke free of that prison of ether.
Alas, within
Yeah.
my fast fading form, enough remained of the Phoenix's energy to offer Bahamut a hold, and he dragged me along in his wake.
And thus began your existence as the Elder Primal's thrall.
I cannot help but wonder at his will to survive. Though he was all but obliterated, Bahamut found a way to seize the power you surrendered. That would explain why part of his physical form survived to be entombed underground.
Oh, that's that mystery solved. Finally.
It would also explain why Eorzea was so terribly warped. Even as the land sought to restore itself, the returning flow of ether was cut off.
Very good. When his grip on existence was once again secured, Bahamut did not cease his feast until he had consumed every last mote of ether that yet floated in the air.
And still he was not fully restored.
Well, duh, he's huge. Have you not noticed?
You must remember that by this time, much of the freed ether had already returned to the land, That which remained was not sufficient to reconstruct so massive a form in its entirety. But there did not need to be. Not for a being sustained by the marvels of Allagan technology.
Which we have the power to shut a piece off right meow.
As long as some piece of Bahamut persists, the coils will seek it out and continue their regenerative task.
There's a panel behind us. Shut it off. Anybody? Anybody?
The fragments of Dalamut appear motionless from the surface, but deep beneath the ground, they had been searching, tunneling through rock and soil towards their escaped prisoner. And, as you have observed for yourselves, they found his heart. Warrior of Light, heed me. You must put a stop to Bahamut's regeneration.
Yeah, I'll just turn off the panel right behind us,
Whether
okay?
it be for man or for dragonkind. The question of justice is irrelevant. The Elder Primal will leave naught but a smoldering wasteland for both his children and ours. I beg you to defend Eorzea and guide its people to the future they yet struggle to find.
That's not a question for you. That's kind of my job. It's what I do around here. Oh, about goddamn time. Jesus. The guy could have grown another arm in the amount of time we took talking about this.
This portal will take you to the final internment, Hulk. 'Tis time for the tale of Bahamut and his part in the calamity to come to an end.
And thus, we don't need to find our way into the fourth one. We just skip it entirely, apparently. Which is all the better.
Alvino, Alize, pray, come closer.
Yeah, can we get a hug already? I mean, come on. It's been like 5 years since we've seen each other, and we clearly all love each other dearly. Let's have a massive group hug. These are your grandchildren, damn it, not cooties.
Your hopes and dreams must no longer be an extension of mine. You must needs find your own reason to fight for this realm, your own meaning in this sea of chaos. Will you do that for me?
Of course, Grandfather. I have already made it my mission to see this newborn Eorzea survive and flourish.
Yeah, I've already created my own personal army. That surely will never go wrong.
Alize, while I was yet enthralled to Bahamut, you spoke of my faith in man's strength. Know that your words reached me, imprisoned though my soul still was. So forceful was your conviction, I wonder if that belief has not become your own. Perhaps, after all your anger and sorrow was spent, you found something greater within you. See this fight to its culmination. 'Tis also your strength, in which I have faith.
Aw, well, thank you. Can I join this hug too?
Thank you for everything. Pray, take your rest, Grandfather. You deserve it.
Now she finally gets the goodbye that she's been waiting 5 long years for.
There are records of an art that allowed one to summon the power of a primal from the essence of its demise. And though I am no true primal, all that I have left, I give to you. Alvino, Alize, My darling grandchildren. May Light's blessings ever keep and protect you.
And now I am going to conveniently perish right as I finish my conversation. Oh, and now I have a sad. So yeah, I have a lot to say about that cutscene, but we're actually going to wait until the turn 13 fight in order to do that, because we have another massive cutscene coming. Which is not in English.
Come, warrior of light. Our task remains undone.
Your last time must not take 20 minutes to shut off the panel, shall we? So yeah, this next cutscene is in Japanese, and I will explain why once we actually get to the fight itself, where I do not have all these cutscenes. Shut it off. Let's not stand here and stare.
ここまでたどり着いたのね。万神バハムート。最後の拘束感を止め、お前を消し去る。
Slowly walking forward. Oh shit. That thing's operational! Sorry. And I'm just gonna stand here and not do anything.
諦めてどうするの？戦い抜くって約束したばかりじゃない。
それぞれの力でかけがえのないものを見つけ守っていきなさい。できるかね？
はい、おじい様。今ならちゃんと答えることができるわ。そうよ。私をここまで連れてきてくれた人がいる。エオルゼアの剣として何度も何度も視線を越えて。だから私も信じられる。人の強さを、私の強さを。バハムート、お前にはもう何も奪わせない。おじい様の愛した地を、大切な人が生きる地を、お前の恨みで焼かせはしない。
Ha! Take that!
やっと聞くことができたよ。君自身の決断を。大丈夫さ。私たちならやれる。奇跡を起こせる。私たちの心は今同じ場所にある。 未来を。
私たちがあなたを届ける。バハムートの神格を打ち砕いて。
So yeah, a little bit cheesy at the end there, but it works. Obviously I'm looking around because all my companions, all 8 of us, the cutscene is designed to have 8 people there. They get teleported in and whatnot. It's a little less effective when you're alone, but at least the cutscene accounts for that with the rays of light there, but whatever. So yeah, 1-on-1 versus Bahamut at last. Of what I assume to be his conscious form there. Now, a lot to say about what's happened in the last 2 cutscenes there. Number 1, the reason I put it in Japanese there instead of English is because, and I hate to say this, and it's partly a result of bad directing more than anything, Alize's English voice actor butchers that scene so hard, and it actually ruins the whole impact of it. She treats the whole roar at Bahamut of, which is basically a very G-rated fuck you, is essentially what it is. It is extremely downplayed, and she just expresses it like she's talking about going to do her laundry or whatever. There's no power behind it whatsoever. So I feel, unfortunately, like I said, I'm guessing I'm chalking it up to bad direction there, especially what we'll see in the closer after the fact here. But yeah, I find it interesting that despite the fact that she's been waiting to see her grandfather and have an actual conversation and say her goodbyes in 5 years, she can barely look him in the eye. Like, this is all that she's wanted to see him again, and now that it's happened, it is so surreal for her that she isn't prepared for this whatsoever, even though that's what she essentially wanted. She didn't even know how to handle it, and honestly, I'm not even sure that she ever really realized that this quest would come to an end. It's just one of those things you want to see it to an end, but once it does, it's like, what the hell do I do now? And that's the dilemma she's facing now, is this has consumed her for this long, so what's she planning to do after this? Like, she hadn't thought that far in advance, even though this is all she wanted to see. Like, her brother has moved on with his life and found his own little quest, which happened to be the same thing as grandfather wanted, obviously, but we saw in 2.3 that, he found his own reason to believe in the same things as well. But she's not quite there yet. But of course, and actually you can actually see shades of it and actually the Turn 9 closer, where she expresses some delight, but admits she had doubts about us actually beating Nail Deus Darnus, who was imbued with Bahamut's power directly. Because obviously, that also shows it behind Bahamut's incredible power. I mean, he nearly destroyed Eorzea, for frick's sake. But that she, it sort of awakened her to the potential of what, we can all do and the powers we have, whether we realize it or not. She's just now realizing she has that strength too. And as I've said before, the fact that she's come down here, she's come all this way despite everything that's been thrown in her face, physically, emotionally, like, this is exhausting, but she just keeps trucking on. Like, and it has a profound effect on her too, so it's not just like, well, like, me, the warrior of light, oh, whatever, it's all in a day's work. No, this has consequences for her, and now she's finally realizing how much strong of a person she is for having gone through all this shit and still pretty much has her head screwed on mostly straight. And literally, like I said, her roaring at Bahamut there is literally a G-rated fuck you, I've had enough of this shit, you have screwed with me enough, you have screwed with my family enough, you have tried to kill me. I mean, that was a blatant attempt on her life. She was briefly unconscious there. Notice that she doesn't move until her brother says something, by the way. But that sometimes happens when you block out briefly, that sometimes just a minor stimulus is enough to snap you out of it. That does happen. I've experienced that myself before. But yeah, she just stands right back up and she's like, I'm done with your shit. And then she just whips out the book, and you know, like, she's injured. She's like covered in ash. She is clearly in pain. Like, she's grabbing her arm when she gets up. And yet she's actually on her toes. She is completely like poised forward, holding up that shield, and she is completely unwavering. Just absolutely completely. She, honestly, because of that scene and the power behind it, is single-handedly, in my opinion, the most badass character in this universe. As I've said, half the stuff she's been through, I would have shit my pants and cried in the fetal position for mommy half the time, okay? Like, seriously. And I'm twice her age. Twice her age! Like, I just can't get enough of, like, how much strength and willpower. And essentially, that is what that is. I mean, we have seen Bahamut. Alright. And it isn't to nearly, obviously, demolishing Eorzea. I mean, granted, he's got the prayer of how many thousand dragons behind him. But not only does he nearly destroy Eorzea in mere seconds, before that, he takes a man from the brink of death, recreates him to serve as his continue to serve as his thrall, because he's not going to let some silly little thing like death get in his way of, you know, having a faithful servant. And snares another primal, okay, on the brink of his own demise with what little strength is there, and it says, you know what, fuck you, I'm gonna take you too. Even though Louisoix wins the battle there, in mere seconds, Bahamut wins the war. He is one hell of a persistent creature. Just one hell. Like, he will not take no for an answer. Like, no, he's like, I'm gonna have it my way, fuck you. You know, and honestly, I can't blame him. I mean, as described, he is sort of the victim here, and he has been trapped in there for 5,000 years. You know, he's had enough time to plan and plot and realize what he's going to do, and, you know, he's going to do anything he can to escape and resume his vengeance and, you know, reclaim the land from the humans for his beloved children and all that stuff. But here in that scene, she actually proves successfully that not only is her will equal to his, but it's stronger. She ultimately wins here. Alright, he made a blatant attempt on her life. Well, in all of ours too, even though we just kind of stare at her like a freaking schmuck and don't do anything. And he's ready to fire a second time, and she's like, no, I'm not having any of your shit anymore. No. And you notice 3 minutes later, the whole thing is cleared, and she's like, no, well, fuck you, I win. Alright, I'm gonna stop you now. Here, Warrior of Light, here, go into his heart. His freaking heart, for crying out loud. Okay? He wouldn't think to, like, double protect that or anything like that. I mean, he probably only has so much energy stored, which is probably he doesn't try to fire a third blast at us. He's probably like, well, fuck, I didn't plan on them surviving this. And whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, to me, that scene is, I mean, and like I said, the English one downplays it a lot with the terrible voice acting. I am sorry. And apologies to our voice actor. I'm pretty sure it's bad directing more than anything else for what I will get into eventually. But yeah, like, and she's like 16 years old too. And of course, on top of all this Alphinaud actually gets some character development as well here. We'll see more of it in the coming patches and within 2.5 and the conclusion of the Realm Reborn storyline before leading us into Heavensward. But Alphinaud is a smug little bastard who thinks he knows better than everybody else. Now, he's not intentionally malicious or dickheadish about it, but because of the, you know, their privileged upbringing and him being a prodigy and all that, he just literally thinks he knows better than everybody else because he's in a better position to and all that crap. Like, this is just the environment and the consequences of what he's grown up in, for better or for worse. But here, except for one little line, obviously at the end of turn 10, he's actually not smug or anything of the like toward his sister, even though she starts out extremely upset still at him about the fight they had and their disagreements and everything like that. He is nothing but polite and civil to her, and he is pretty much the only person he treats like that. you could make a small argument for Minfilia, but she's kind of also his boss, so obviously naturally, and she knew his grandfather too. So there's a bit of a respect factor there as well. But he treats his sister differently than how he treats everybody else, which obviously means he really genuinely does care about her as family and as his sister. And when she actually, delivers her "screw off, Bahamut, I'm not gonna let you win," when he gets up, like, he's been waiting for this the whole time. He doesn't say, "Well, it's about damn time you got your head screwed on right, sis," or anything like that. He is proud of her. Like, he is just proud that she's finally figured herself out after all this time. It's been like years. I mean, who knows how much they've fought in the past, 5 years, ever since, they lost Louisoix the first time and everything like that. But there is, like, no negativity on his part whatsoever. And actually, the first thing he does when, obviously, even though he's not really knocked unconscious, the first thing he does is ask if she's okay. At least that's what he says in Japanese. Obviously, the subtitles reflect what they said in the English one, but it's pretty much the same thing. But I actually like his English counterpart a bit there better, because he pretty much shouts her name in worry. Like, here, in Japanese, he's like, "Oh, are you okay?" In English, he's like, "Holy shit, are you okay?" Which is my one regret about having to go with the Japanese version of that. But her little revelation of character is far, far more important than his at that point. So anyway, back to other matters. That including the whole origins of the Burning Heart here. Now, Louisoix, like, mentions, the whole constructs have been, digging and trying to find his heart. It's never actually said, but my theory is, given his rate of regeneration relative to when we got in these coils anyway, the primal roar that we heard at the very end of the original 2.0 storyline, at the end of the party, "Hey, we freed Thancred and the Praetorium is now blown up," and all that stuff, was actually him awakening as a result of the coils finding, finally, his heart after 5 long years. Again, I don't really have any proof of that, but considering when we first went down here, he was only a head, and then we eventually came down here again, and not that much time has passed in universe, even between all the patches, that now he's got, his full head, his shoulders, part of his chest, half of his wings, and the entirety of one of his arms. The other one's just, like, still a stub there. But given, like, obviously the rate of regeneration there, had he been regenerating for actually the whole 5 years, he probably would have been completely freaking whole by now and obliterated us all to begin with. So that's my theory. And it also explains why we heard that roar out of nowhere in the first place. That it just, it just so happened to line up at the right spot that, his regeneration began right then and there, and he's like, "Ah, damn it!" But yeah, the one thing about this fight I'm going to talk about is his ultimate move there, Akmorn, which obviously is a giant blinding tower of white light. Even as a tank, you can't see it. I've actually specifically looked for, like, tank points of view to see if it was any different from up there than it is back there. Nope, it is just a giant laser beam of death in your face, and it hurts a lot. A real freaking lot. So yeah, one thing I find very kind of amusing and kind of annoying is we never actually hear Bahamut speak, both either in a voice or just dialogue coming from him, the primal. I mean, like, some of the primals, did have, voices, like, obviously, Ramu was, voice acting and whatnot. Leviathan, we actually didn't have, like, a face-to-face encounter with. Neither we did Titan, but at least in battle, they still spoke to us. I mean, it was more about being pissed off and, saying, like, "Ah, you'll not defeat me, tainted of the light, blah, 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 stop touching my children, blah, 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 blah," all that kind of stuff. But at least it was some dialogue. Bahamut gives us nothing. Which makes me wonder, is he either incapable of speech, or more likely he's just like, "I'm done, I'm not going to lower myself to talking with you." Because he does sort of speak through us through, sort of, Deus Darnus and a little bit through Louisoix. So I'm guessing he, like, basically it's his motivations onto them and whatnot and whatever, but it's almost like a darn shame. And that's also kind of a darn shame that Turn 9 doesn't have voice acting, but I can kind of understand why. Because what would Nail Deus Darnus' voice sound like? Would it be that of the actual Nail? Would it be that of a woman because, you know, is kind of recreated as a woman? Or would it have been the voice of Bahamut itself? I have no idea. I think that's just one of the things that, you know, is up to your own personal interpretation and things like that. But yeah, it's kind of a shame that Bahamut isn't, even in his demise, and yes, I did get killed at the end there, he says nothing whatsoever. Again, I'm guessing he just doesn't want to lower himself to our level by speaking to us. That's just my personal theory. It's kind of a disappointment that it's nothing about himself or defeating us or his beloved children or anything like that or whatever. It's just, no, just nothing. I mean, he is like a rage-induced primal, but he's obviously a very intelligent primal and a very willful one, as I have already gone into. So, it's not like he's just, you know, I mean, maybe he is a mindless machine by now, but he's not a total idiot, you know what I mean? So, back to the English cutscenes.
You did it!
Well, that and 7 other people, and I kind of died at the end, but nobody needs to know that. Turn the damn thing off already. Oh my god. You know, he could have grown another arm by all this time, you know. Just saying.
But one task remains.
Yes. Yes, do it already, please. Alphino, stop standing there. I understand the significance of you wanting to let her do it on her own, but goddamn, push her forward a little bit. Say, go on. It's, you know, it's your right to do this.
There shall be naught left to bind Bahamut to this world. His beloved children will finally know peace.
But fuck him. But notice how she mentions, you know, wanting his children to have peace, and she mentions nothing of the peace she's gained for herself there, which is an indicator of how much she has grown and how much of her grief she has left behind her. I can imagine Bahamut right now. I'll catch you next time, Gadget. But still, I just wonder, you know, assuming he would have the power to say anything right here, I kind of wish he would say something. But there's just no reaction from him whatsoever, and that's kind of shitty if you ask me. No, I'll be back or anything. Just nothing. And thus, the burning heart is no more.
"'Tis done. He is truly gone." You knew, didn't you? You knew what Grandfather had become.
I was not certain, but from all I had gleaned, it seemed a distinct possibility. The scene people describe of the Battle of Cartano was one of unimaginable devastation, and 'tis through the combined prayers of the desperate and an abundant source of ether that primals are born. I merely put 2 and 2 together.
And you consider that a sufficient explanation? Well, however you stumbled across your theory, 'twas this revelation that made you wary of my attachment to Grandfather. You feared that in my obsession I would fall under his primal sway. Is that why you decided to join us? To pull me back should I show signs of wavering?
Even though he was just as much at risk of it as you
Pray
were.
Forgive me, sister. I wished only to protect you. Yet I see now that I needn't have doubted the strength of your conviction. May I ask you a question? What do you now intend to do with the truth you have uncovered?
Which particular truth was that, brother? The fact that desperate prayer gave rise to the primal phoenix? That this new god was responsible for setting Eorzea on the path to rebirth? Should such a tale become common knowledge, people would soon offer up their prayers in earnest. They would beseech Phoenix to complete the healing that was begun.
Yet as you and I know all too well, the very act of calling forth this savior would do more harm to the land than good. We cannot encourage such worship for this very reason. Were Grandfather forced to return as an ether-draining primal, it would undo all that he had worked to protect. Your abiding love for him was the key that unlocked the truth of the calamity. But keys may also serve to seal doors that were best left unopened. Let your love now guide your actions, and lock away deep inside the fate of both Grandfather and Bahamut.
Honestly, that's kind of a dickheadish line at this, because if she hadn't come down here in the first place, nobody would have known about Bahamut's impending return to incinerate us all again. So it's actually a better thing than,
Fear
in the
not,
long run,
Athena.
that she actually
I
decided to
understand
snoop
what
around
must be
here.
done. The realm need not know the truth for it to be saved. That the Elder Primal is banished, to return no more. That is enough.
Yeah, except nobody knew he was coming back to begin with. Awesome! We don't have to tell anybody shit!
Let us make our way back to the surface. Poor Urianger must be beside himself with worry.
Why didn't he come down with us, by the way? I mean, I suppose it's to make sure we have safe passage back and whatnot, but we didn't even know we were going to get down here in one piece. That is why this is so risky in the first place. But whatever. But yeah, the reason I obviously went back to the English there, and why I think her terrible English voice acting in the first part of Turn 13 opener there, was the direction failure, because she utterly nails that. In Japanese, her voice sounds exactly the same. I mean, it's decently acted and whatnot, but here in English, her voice, the inflections in her voice just change and so much better reflect than in Japanese how much calmer and at peace she is about this whole thing finally being over. Like I said, the Japanese isn't bad, but nothing. It almost seems through her voice, you can't tell any changes about her. You know they're there, but you can't. It's not evident through that. Here, it most definitely is, and why I don't think she's a bad actress. It was bad directing, because she fucking nails that. So hi, here we're in one piece. We did it. No, I kind of wish they would just play a random prank on him. Just as a sign that, everything's gonna be okay now. Dude, it's like 50 yards down the road! You can take the scenic route. He could probably see us walking, for frig's sake. But whatever. Yeah, I did all the heavy lifting, and my shirt and robes are still, white and pristine as hell, but I guess being the Warrior of Light means I have instant laundry abilities, I guess? I don't know. Yes, that's a joke, but we know what I mean. Yeah, they're covered in ash and stuff, and they're like, yeah, I don't give a fuck right now. That's right, we took care of all the emotional wounds. Everything else is just an afterthought. What? ass was trying to get in there in the first place? I mean, I'm sure there would be some schmuck who'd be like, hey, I wonder what's down here and try to enter it. But it's only been us this whole time that has been actively seeking a way to get in there. But I like how he's offering to do it for her. Now, what she's a little slow on the ball here is that he's not referring to what just happened in the final coil there. He's referring to all this shit she's been through the whole time. Much of which that he just wasn't present for, you know. And he knows that and understands that. So she's done more of the work. Now he's gonna finish it for her. And I love how she just, like, stares him down. She's like, what? He's like, I'm better at this anyway. It's cool, I got this. So it's nice to see, even though, you know, they've come to terms with each other, and she's not really angry with him anymore because she knows his interference was simply because, well, you know, the reason she was mad at him is because she thought he didn't give a shit. But, you know, his reasons for doing what he did and he giving her space was precisely because he gave a shit, and more specifically about her. I love how he just like completely just walks off. He's like, yeah, conversation over, let's get out of here. But for all, you know, they've kissed and made up and all that stuff, but it still shows that there's still a little bit of sibling rivalry on here, you know. And of course, this is the callback to initially what started kind of the whole fight between them in the first place. But now it's her who echoes it back to him. And I like how she thanks him for this, because she finally realizes what he's meant this whole time. You know, even though who knows how much of this they had to put up with when they were younger, and they do look and dress alike for frick's sake and whatnot, but how much, it makes me wonder how much they were pressured to act alike and be alike, and oh, you're twins, you know, therefore you need to be attached to the hip mentality and whatever. They've grown up, and he's grown beyond this philosophy, however much may have affected them as children. And basically, what he's telling her is, you know what, we have very different ideas about how we should solve the problems in the world, but you know what, we both want the same things in the end, and it's okay to think differently. You know, we're still reaching for a common goal. We just don't necessarily agree on how to get there. And for once, she's wearing something new, folks. They can have other outfits. But now, obviously, she realizes that, too, that it's okay to be different, you know, and you don't have to be attached to the hip, and most importantly, that whatever she does, he trusts her, and his trust in her has never wavered. That's half of his character development down here, that he's experienced down here, that what we've seen, that, you know, he's known what she's been capable of all this time, and even he finds out he's somewhat even underjudged her for what she was able to do. But he's known about it this whole time, and it's just her realizing it now, you know, what she has been capable of. But he's known this entire time, and his trust in her has never wavered for a second, and will continue to not waver. So here we are, obviously, at the Burning Wall. I couldn't think of the name there for a second. In Eastern Thanalan, this is one of the Stones of the 12. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head. It's not really important. But as you can see, Tsung, mother, and presumably her child are offering a prayer up there. But I like how she's not ready to go back to the world yet. You know, she's taking this time to reflect on what's happened and finally actually settle down and let this all sink in, which is what her brother wanted her to do while he's off, you know, telling some bullshit story to the grand companies. Because obviously we have had some of, you know, their factions in their own helping us out through here, so we gotta tell them that, you know, somehow that everything's okay, we have no longer need for their services, and, you know, but you don't need to worry anymore, blah, 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 blah. So telling them kind of makes sense, but I find it interesting here that she's upset that the world can never know what happened down there, including how much ass we kicked. But also, this goes to show her change in character here, is she's taking zero credit for herself, because she's the one who decided to go down here in the first place. It's through her research we found out even how to get in there, barring the whole final one and having needing outside help take the back door notwithstanding. But it's her who wanted to keep coming down here and figure this out and, you know, save Grandfather and by extension save Eorzea. We're just here along for the ride because, as she said in the beginning, that she knows her own limits. She way overestimated what her own limits were, but she just needed basically a bodyguard and someone to kick ass and protect her and, you know, handle some of these threats that might have been down here because nobody knew what was down here. That's basically all we did. She's the one who went through the emotional hell over here, and she's not giving herself any credit for it. Even for standing up against a freaking primal that nobody was able to do. You know, like I said, you know, even Louisoix versus, you know, is Phoenix versus Bahamut. Bahamut eventually wins. She is the first one, besides us just, you know, destroying the Burning Heart, that actually takes a stand against him and wins. But I love here how she's leaving a silent little prayer for even Nail and the Dragons of Mericidia here. Nothing for Bahamut himself, I noticed, which is kind of shitty of her, slightly. Even as rage-fueled as he was, she did mention she had pity for him, but I kind of find it kind of crappy that she doesn't leave a prayer for him as well, especially given her revelation of character and how much calmer and more at peace she is. I think it would have been, I can kind of understand writing-wise why they don't do that, but I think it would have been a better gesture on her part to actually, as a final thought, leave one for him too. Because he, you know, he is the victim entirely of this. Primals don't ask to be created, they just are, you know. So yeah, as I've said before, she still has a little bit of figuring and self-discovery to work out, because now that this is all over, she realizes now too that it is indeed, as is with her brothers, her want to save and protect this world, but she doesn't know where exactly her path is going to lead her yet. So she's actually, you know, she's going to go off and do a little world building on her own, and hopefully she'll find something along the way to guide her to her true life's calling, which I actually kind of like. And again, we see some silver sibling rivalry here that she's like, yeah, I'm sure my brother will do a great job, you know, convincing all the others of this bullshit story we're gonna feed them, which we never find out what it is, but I think that's for the best. But even though she hasn't really figured out what she's gonna do yet, she's like, "Oh, he is not gonna beat me." So I think they were very competitive with each other as children, whether or not it was by their own wills or if it was kind of thrown upon them by everyone else around them. That I don't know. Probably a little bit of both. But yeah, I kind of like how they just don't resolve this with her right away, that she does need time to let this sink in and find her own way and everything, and it's not, you know, again, she's 16 years old, for frick's sake, you know, Alphino has got his whole life figured out, he knows exactly what he wants to do and all his reasons for it, at least for the, you know, for the time being, and he's already well on his way forward as a teenager, and he's got everything figured out, and she's a bit more natural, and she's like, you know what, I don't have to have everything figured out right now. You know, I can, you know, explore a little bit in life or whatever. And that's a good lesson for, you know, people nowadays, like teenagers and people getting out of college. Nobody has their shit figured out at a certain point in their lives. They just don't. So obviously she's going to take the time to do that. When and where she'll be seen again, we don't know. obviously I'm hoping they bring her back into the main scenario, because she was a part of it even in the beginning, and it seemed just kind of stupid to exposit her just there, because her and her brother being twins and he being a major character, just simply cannot just go unfulfilled and whatnot. I mean, I'm glad they gave her own little storyline down here, but obviously this being a side story, not everyone has done this. I mean, this shit was hard when it first came out. It was hard. And even some turns, including that of 9 and 13 and stuff, still continue to be hard, even in the expansion where you can actually run it at level 60 with level 60 skills, 3 times the hit points and everything like that, simply because the mechanics require so much cooperation on the part of, your group. So it requires a lot of, not just playing the game, but having to play well with others, which is one of the problems actually her and her brother both share, is that they really don't play well with others. Maybe that's why they need our help constantly. I don't know. I just thought of that little funny little thought just right now. But thank you so much for joining me on this little adventure. I will put anything in the description I think of after, because there was so much stuff I wanted to talk about it, and literally the 4 hours that this entire saga has literally not been enough to discuss everything I want to. But sometimes, thoughts enter and leave our minds, sometimes, and they think like, oh shit, I wanted to mention that, and I didn't, crap. So I'll leave stuff and a link in the description, where I can put other thoughts that I didn't mention, as well as other thoughts I have about the two of their character development and whatnot. But now the interlude is finally over with both Crystal Tower and Bahamut. I wish between the two they had a bit crossover between the stories, but considering this one isn't part of the main scenario, actually neither of them are part of the main scenario, and this one's even harder to complete with a group. I can see why they didn't, and they need to make the stories independent of one another, but I still like how that they relate to each other, that with Bahamut and the Crystal Tower actually, being what caused the destruction of the Allagons to begin with. I really wish Coil had mentioned that at all, but what am I going to do? Just as a testament to even Bahamut's power, that even, whether he did it intentionally or not, we don't know, but even the fact that being imprisoned in Dalamud did not really stop him or that power from literally destroying the Allagons. So even if he didn't consciously cause it, it would have been a nice callback to mention that as part of it, just as a testament to his power, even if it was, like I said, bullshit. But whatever, what you gonna do? So thank you very, very, very much for watching and listening to me ramble by this. My face hurts from talking about this so damn much. But now we're actually going to get back to the actual main story with the what is the beginning of the end of A Realm Reborn in patch 2.5, where we will even see more shit hit the fan. Thank you very much, friends, and I shall see you then.